In 2022, as the West imposed the most severe sanctions in modern history on Russia after the invasion of Ukraine, countries across Europe rushed to cut ties with Moscow. India did the opposite. New Delhi dramatically increased its purchases of discounted Russian oil, at one point becoming one of Moscow's largest energy customers. While Washington urged isolation, India kept buying. While Europe searched for the alternatives, India secured long-term supply. And while global leaders framed the conflict as battle between democracies and autocracies, India refused to pick a side. Because for India, the war in Europe wasn't the central issue. Energy security was. And that decision revealed something that shocked policymakers from Washington to Beijing. India would not be pressed into alignment, not even during one of the biggest geopolitical crises of the century, which raises a far bigger question. If even a major war couldn't force India to choose sides, what will? Because in 2026, the single most important question in global power politics is no longer who will dominate the world, it's which side will India choose. In 2023, US officials quietly describe India as the most important partner of the 21st century. At the same time, China's state media warned that India could become a frontline state against Beijing. Russia, India's Cold War ally, increased arms discounts and energy deals to keep New Delhi close. And by early 2026, as global trade wars intensified and supply chains fractured, one reality became unavoidable. No major power can afford to lose India. But here's the twist. India isn't choosing sides. India is playing every side, and it might be winning. To understand why, you have to rewind not years but decades, to the moment the world order began to shift. Because India's rise didn't start with military power, it started with a quiet economic awakening. In 1991, India was nearly bankrupt. Foreign reserves were so low, the government had only enough money to pay for 3 weeks of imports. Gold had to be physically airlifted to London as collateral for the emergency loans. The country that had been once the crown jewel of the British Empire now faced economic collapse. Then came sweeping reforms. Deregulation, privatization, opening to foreign investment. Slow at first, painful, uneven, but unstoppable. By 2014, when Narendra Modi became Prime Minister, India was ready for acceleration. Infrastructure projects multiplied, digital systems expanded nationwide, manufacturing ambitions skyrocketed. And then came the statistic that made every world capital sit up straight. India would soon become the most populous country on earth. More people than China, the largest workforce of any democracy in history, more consumers than any single market outside the United States. Population isn't just a number, it's labor, soldiers, taxpayers, innovators, voters, buyers of everything from smartphones to fighter jets. By 2025, India's economy surpassed 4 trillion, overtaking Japan to become the world's fourth largest economy, with projections pointing toward number 3 before the decade ends. But raw size alone doesn't explain why superpowers are competing for India's loyalty. Geography does. Look at a map. India sits between the Middle East, Central Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia. 4 regions that together produce most of the world's energy, manufacturing, and trade flows. Roughly 40% of global trade passes through the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean isn't just a body of water. It's the bloodstream of globalization. Oil from the Persian Gulf, goods from East Asia, raw materials from Africa, energy shipments to Europe. Control that ocean or even influence it, and you influence the world economy. That's why China has spent over a decade building ports across the region, from Pakistan's Gwadar to Sri Lanka's Hambantota. Tota. Western analysts call it the string of pearls. India calls it encirclement. And this is where geopolitics turn into strategy. Because India isn't just sitting there defensively, it's building its own network of power. Naval expansion, strategic island bases, partnership across Southeast Asia, deepening ties with countries wary of China's rise. One of the most significant moves was India's growing role in the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, better known as Quad, alongside the US, Japan, and Australia. Officially, it's not a military alliance. Unofficially, it looks suspiciously like one. Joint naval exercises, defense coordination, technology cooperation, supply chain planning. To Beijing, it resembles containment. To Washington, it's insurance. Meanwhile, India maintains strong ties with the Russia. Yes, the same Russia in confrontation with the West. Even after the Ukraine war reshaped global diplomacy, India continued buying Russian oil at discounted prices, saving billions and fueling its economy. Critics accused India of undermining sanctions. Indian officials responded bluntly. Europe buys energy too. And that's the key to India's strategy. India refused to frame the world as two opposing camps. Instead, it sees a marketplace of power and intends to maximize its leverage in all directions. This balancing act became crystal clear during meetings between Modi and Joe Biden. Publicly, the relationship looked closer than ever. Defense deals, semiconductor cooperation, intelligence sharing. Privately, US officials were frustrated that India would not condemn Russia or fully align against China. But Washington couldn't push too hard because losing India would be far worse than tolerating its independence. China understands this too. Relations between India and China are tense, especially after deadly border clashes in the Himalayas in 2020 that shattered decades of uneasy peace. Tens of thousands of troops remain deployed alongside the line of actual control. Infrastructure races are underway on both sides of the mountains, and yet trade between the two countries continues to grow. China remains one of India's largest trading partners. This is geopolitics without friendship, pure strategic necessity. Then there's Russia, led by Vladimir Putin, which sees India as a critical counterbalance to the Western pressure and Chinese dominance alike. For decades, Russian weapons formed the backbone of India's military, fighter jets, tanks, submarines, missile systems. Even as India diversifies suppliers, buying from the US, France and Israel, Russian equipment still plays a central role. And Moscow knows that if India drifts too far towards Washington, Russia's global influence shrinks dramatically. So here we are in 2026, three major powers, three competing visions of world order, one pivotal country. And India isn't choosing sides, it's choosing advantage. But the real reason everyone wants India isn't just what it is today, it's what it will become. Because demographics suggest that by 2030s, India could have the largest workforce on earth, long after China's population begins shrinking. Technology companies already see India as the next digital giant. Military planners see a potential superpower capable of projecting force across the Indo-Pacific. Energy markets see the biggest future source of demand, and political strategists see something even rarer. A massive democracy whose alignment could legitimize whichever global system it supports. This is why global leaders keep showing up in New Delhi, accelerating trade deals, defense agreements and strategic partnerships. Why even rivals are unusually careful not to alienate India. Because in a fragmented world, scale matters, and India has scale like no one else. But there's a deeper layer to this story, one that makes India uniquely unpredictable. Unlike Cold War powers, India was born from a struggle against empire. Its foreign policy DNA is built on autonomy. The term Indian strategist often uses strategic autonomy, not isolation, not alliance, freedom to maneuver. A doctrine shaped during the non-aligned movement when India refused to join either the US or Soviet blocs. Today, that philosophy has evolved into something far more powerful: multi-alignment, partnerships everywhere, commitments nowhere, absolute. And that's what makes India the ultimate swing power of the 21st century. Not because it will dominate the world alone, but because it may determine who does. Yet there's a problem. India's rise is not guaranteed. Internal challenges, inequality, infrastructure gaps, political tensions, border threats could slow or derail its trajectory. And external pressures are intensifying as superpowers compete for influence. The world wants India on its side, but pulling India too hard could push it away. So the real question isn't just why does every superpower want India, it's what happens if India never fully commits to any of them, because that outcome would create something entirely new in global politics. A third pole of power, not Western, not Chinese, not Russian, Indian. And if that happens, the 21st century won't be defined by a new Cold War, but by a multipolar world where India holds the balance. And this is only the beginning of the story, because behind the diplomacy, trade deals and military exercises lies a far more dramatic struggle. One involving supply chains, technology wars, border flashpoints and the race to dominate the future of energy and manufacturing. A struggle where India isn't just a prize, it's a player. If the first phase of India's rise was about survival and the second was about growth, the third phase, the one we are living through right now, is about leverage. Because in 2026, India is no longer asking how do we catch up, It's asking how do we shape the system? And the battlefield where that question is being fought isn't only military, it's economic, technological, energy driven, and psychological. Take supply chains. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the hard truth. The world was dangerously dependent on Chinese manufacturing. From pharmaceuticals to semiconductors, from rare earths to electronics, critical goods flowed overwhelmingly from one country, China. By 2022, US officials began using a new phase, friendshoring, move production away from geopolitical rivals and into trusted partners. But there was a problem. Very few countries are large enough to absorb large-scale manufacturing relocation. Vietnam too small, Mexico limited capacity. Only one democracy has the labor pool, consumer market and geopolitical weight to potentially replace even part of China's dominance. India. By 2025, Apple aims to shift roughly 25% of its global iPhone production to India, up from less than 5% just a few years earlier. Semiconductor giants began announcing investment plans. Defense firms expanded partnerships, technology alliances deepened, and in 2026, India joined a US-led semiconductor and advanced manufacturing coordination framework designed to secure supply chains against geopolitical disruption. This wasn't charity, it was strategy. The United States doesn't want to just sell to India, it wants India inside its technology ecosystem. Because whoever controls semiconductor supply chains controls AI, military hardware, and digital economy. And whoever builds the next manufacturing hub controls jobs, influence, and long-term leverage. But here's the twist. India doesn't want to replace China, it wants to compete with it. That distinction matters. India's government launched massive production-linked incentive programs to attract foreign firms. Billions of dollars in subsidies, infrastructure corridors under construction, digital public infrastructure scaling at unprecedented speed. The goal isn't dependence on the West, it's domestic industrial power. And that ambition makes Washington excited and cautious. Because a strong India is useful, but an India that becomes fully self-sufficient is harder to influence. Meanwhile, energy politics adds another layer. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Western sanctions reshaped global oil flows. Europe reduced Russian imports dramatically. India increased them. By mid-2023, India had become one of the largest buyers of discounted Russian crude, at times importing over 1.5 million barrels per day. That oil was refined in Indian facilities and often exported as diesel or jet fuel, even back to European markets. By early 2026, Russian oil imports into India fluctuated but remained significant, around 1.1 to 1.2 million barrels per day in recent months. Why? Because energy security is non-negotiable for a rapidly growing economy. But here's where the game intensifies. The United States wants India to reduce Russian dependence. Russia wants India to deepen it. And Middle Eastern producers Saudi Arabia, the UAE are expanding long-term contracts to secure market share. India once again holds leverage. It can play suppliers against one another, demand discounts, diversify contracts, maintain autonomy. Now consider something even more powerful: narrative. India is the world's largest democracy. That label matters. In a world where political systems compete for legitimacy, India's alignment carries symbolic weight. If India sides with Western democracies, it reinforces the narrative of our democratic coalition. If India resists alignment and champions multipolar independence, it strengthens the argument that global order need not to be Western-led. This is why diplomatic language around India is so careful. No one wants to push too hard, because alienating India would send a signal globally, especially to Global South. And in 2026, the Global South matters more than ever. Countries across Africa, Latin America and Southeast Asia are watching India's strategy closely. Because if India can extract benefits from all sides without losing autonomy, why can't they? Then there's BRICS, originally a loose grouping of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. BRICS has expanded influence and membership discussions in recent years. For Russia and China, BRICS represents an alternative to Western-dominated institutions. For India, it's leverage. India participates but resists any anti-Western framing. It uses BRICS to amplify its global voice, not to choose a camp. Again, multi-alignment. But let's talk about the real fear driving superpower competition. Demographics. China's population is shrinking. Europe's workforce is aging, Japan's demographic decline is severe, the United States remains relatively stable but polarized. India, however, is entering a demographic window where its working age population will dominate for decades. If India converts that demographic dividend into productivity, its economic growth could compound dramatically. If it fails, it could face instability. Superpowers want to shape which path India takes. Investment isn't just profit driven, it's geopolitical. And that competition is intensifying across nearly every domain, from trade to technology to military power. So here we are in 2026. Global trade tensions are rising, US tariff policies are volatile. China continues military modernization, Russia recalibrates its energy networks, Europe seeks strategic autonomy of its own, and India sits at the crossroads of every one of those trajectories, not passive but central. But here's the most important part of this story. India doesn't see itself as a prize, it sees itself as the architect. It isn't asking which bloc to join, it's asking how to build a world where it doesn't have to join one. And that ambition changes everything. Because if India succeeds in maintaining strategic autonomy while growing into a top 3 global economy, it could redefine what power looks like in the 21st century. Not alliance-based dominance, not ideological blocks, but flexible transactional multi-vector power. And that model could spread. The superpowers understands this. That's why the competition isn't loud, it's subtle. Trade incentives, technology sharing, defense cooperation, energy contracts, diplomatic flattery, strategic patience, every side nudging, every side hoping, every side calculating. So when you hear about a trade negotiation delay or a discounted oil shipment or a semiconductor investment, understand that none of it is isolated. It's all part of the same story. A global race not to win India but to convince it.